Zenith is no doubt best known for its legendary El Primero series of chronographs. While the Defy collection tends to occupy a more eccentric and daring position for the brand in a modern context. However, in this video, we're going to take a look at a completely new Defy that offers some intriguing vintage inspiration paired with a surprisingly time-only El Primero caliber with a 10-second indication, the Zenith Defy Skyline. Let's jump into it. All right guys, now before we jump into this video, I do want to mention that we released a new Zenith El Primero blog. Since this watch is going to have an El Primero movement on the inside, I think it's important to understand the whole backstory of the El Primero movement. In the article, we look at the original origins of the movement, its inclusion in other famous watches throughout the industry, and why even 50 years later, this watch still remains relevant and is still being reworked to be provided in many different pieces. Check it out in the link down below. Also, if you want additional editorial content sent to you every single week, you can sign up on the blog page. We'll send a weekly newsletter, as well as some other prominent features that we're writing up. Now, we just hired an additional individual that's gonna be driving most of that editorial content on the site from the written side to help kind of assist what we're doing here on the video side. So Mark Bernardo joined us from Watch Time. Very excited to have him. He has well over 2 decades of experience writing about watches, and feel really confident and strongly that you guys will really enjoy that style of content we're throwing out to you every single week. So subscribe to that newsletter and check it out. So as mentioned, when it comes to Zenith, the brand is best known for its creation of the El Primero automatic chronograph caliber introduced in 1969. And while other automatic chronographs were also released in the same year from Heuer and Seiko, it is the Zenith El Primero that has maintained a level of staying power that is hard to rival while beating away at a 5 Hz beat rate. Given the incredible popularity of vintage watches over the past 15 years or so, Zenith has successfully leaned into its heritage, producing a number of vintage-inspired El Primero powered chronographs, including the recent Chronomaster Original and the polarizing Chronomaster Sport, both of which include the El Primero 3600 caliber capable of 1/10 of a second measurement, the same base movement powering this new Defy, which we'll certainly talk about. As some helpful context, the Defy name for Zenith dates back to the late 1960s, prioritizing a 3-hand layout with an emphasis on durability. Given the gravity of the El Primero automatic chronographs, it is no surprise that the original Defy ran a bit under the radar, a market awareness situation that has gradually dissipated with increasing references and focus for the subset of their catalog in the more recent years. The time-only model that serves as the Skyline's direct predecessor, the Defy Classic, launched back in 2018, equipped with a more straightforward Zenith Elite caliber, and was a model that we have looked at in the past on the channel, and I was a huge fan of. But let's take a look at this new watch with an overview, and at the end discuss some of its more interesting approaches, because it certainly has a few of those. So diving into the overview portion of this video, it's important to note that this is a new model that differs from the previous 3-hand Defy Classic. However, it does share some overlapping characteristics. Now, the Skyline presents an angular construction with stark case facets throughout that extend to its bracelet while maintaining a lightweight feel on the wrist. However, it is using stainless steel, and it does add some heft compared to the classic version. In regards to dimensions, the watch comes in at 41 millimeters in diameter, paired with a surprisingly abbreviated 46.2 millimeter lug-to-lug measurement and a svelte 11.7 millimeter thickness. And while the shorter case length does help this watch wear just a bit smaller than its 41 millimeter width, it's important to note that the end links of this bracelet do not pivot to a strong degree, extending that theoretical lug-to-lug somewhere around 54 millimeters if you try it to find that longest end. Yet this is also misleading. So I would say splitting the difference here is probably a more accurate representation of how this one will wear, and I would say closer to a 40.5 to 41 millimeter watch on the wrist. This all considered, it does wear some more presence compared to the previous Defy Classic that came in titanium, that being probably the biggest thing that I noticed when strapping this one on. The case exhibits fine linear brushing utilized across the majority of the case elements, with the smaller hits of polishing across a segmented bevel at the top of the case sides and along the edge of the impressively detailed 12-sided bezel that reflects with changing lighting conditions. At 3, a 5-pointed star sign screw-down crown offers alternating finishes, watches while pairing with the Caseback, which is affixed with 4 screws and securing this watch's sporty 100 meters of water resistance. And while this watch at a glance appears to have traditional 20mm lugs with especially tightly fitted end links, the button-operated quick release mechanism only releases the smaller inner links from the case, making this a true integrated bracelet. And if you recall the previous Defy Classic, this interchangeability was one of the main points missing, as it was cumbersome to change straps, as you had to adjust 2 small screws on the previous version to actually change out the strap, so much more involved there. With this new system, they've improved this dramatically, and I think this is my favorite new feature from this variant. In terms of finishing, the bracelet is constructed with a screwed H-link style completed with a majority brushed finish, offset by polishing on the beveled sides of the links, as well as on top and bottom of the inner links. It articulates well, is comfortable, and complements the angular design concept of the case to an impressive effect, tapering to a signed hidden dual deployant butterfly style clasp that does not feature any types of half links or micro adjustment, though the smaller individual links mean finding a precise fit should not present an issue for most. In addition to the excellent bracelet, each Defy Skyline also includes a color-matched textured rubber strap complete with its own well-done signed deployant clasp, offering a sportier option as well as increased versatility and easy interchangeability provided by the quick release mechanism. Both the bracelet and the strap are of high quality. However, the slender bracelet thickness that just drapes to the wrist would be my personal choice for a daily driver. Now, taking a view of the watch's anterior facing surface, a flat sapphire crystal equipped with anti-reflective material for an unobstructed view of the rework dial is beneath. Starting at the outskirts, simple linear markings printed in white over a smooth metallic ring denote the minutes before giving way to this dial's primary central surface, which is engraved with a repetitive 4-sided star motif derived from an earlier version of the Zenith logo. Our indices are faceted, applied, polished, and neatly filled with luminescent material in keeping with the model's sportier position, with only an applied Zenith star and the brand wordmark breaking up a clean design. Managing time telling at the center are a set of stylized baton hands with alternating finishes and a slender strip of lume at the center. Combined with the indices, the Super Luminova C1 luminescent material utilized here is adequate and shines with impressive incandescence, especially for this luxury category, which sometimes is not always the best with lume. At 3, a faceted aperture gives way to a color-coordinated date wheel with a sub-seconds register located opposite of the date at the 9 o'clock. The sub-seconds register is multidimensional when viewed under the macro lens and is complete with a printed 10 at its uppermost point, denoting the unique and simply unconventional 10-second rotation. So the answer to how this 10-second rotation is actually possible can be found as we look through the Sapphire Exhibition Caseback, which offers a clear view of the El Primero 3620. When the El Primero 3600 debuted along with the Chronomaster Sport, the watch's biggest move outside of its Daytona-adjacent design format was the 1/10 of a second chronograph based on the original El Primero Caliber 400 architecture. When activated, the chronograph hand made one complete revolution around the dial every 10 seconds. With the chronograph functionality enabled by a lateral clutch column wheel mechanism, the 3600 was also high frequency at 36,000 vibrations per hour or 5 Hertz, and complete with an impressive power reserve of 60 hours, as well as a silicon escapement wheel. Now, this approach of unconventional timekeeping was a mark of uniqueness, a trait that I thought was especially important in a design such as the Chronomaster Sport, and was cool to see it followed up in the Chronomaster Original, watch that I actually have on my wrist right now. But to bring the base chronograph movement there and reposition it as the 3620 in this Defy is probably the biggest talking point. So the 1/10 of a second capabilities from the 3600 have also been transferred over here in a form of a sub-seconds at 9 that will sweep that hand and make one complete rotation every 10 seconds, which Zenith indicates is a never before seen execution from a time-only watch, and enabled here by linking the seconds hand directly to the escapement wheel with the movement's 10 oscillations a second, making it possible. Now, the movement finish itself is a more subdued approach with a mix of blasting and brushed surfaces, with the only pop of color coming from that silicon escapement wheel visible in a bright shade of blue. For general specifications here for this movement, we're looking at 36,000 vibrations per hour or 5 Hertz. It does feature hacking and hand winding, hacking stopping the second hand when you pull the crown to the farthest position, and a power reserve of 60 hours. But now that we've looked a little bit closer at this watch, I do want to discuss just maybe some of the pros and cons of this piece and just kind of my general take. Now, before I get into the good of this watch, I definitely want to talk about some just things that need to be brought up as question marks. People are gonna, of course, bring up that integrated style design coming and just where is it maybe being pulled from. Sure, you could look at things like the Royal Oak, but the Defy family in its history, looking at that A3642 reference, it does have history that predates that of the Royal Oak. So I think that's important to distinguish at the beginning. I actually think the two biggest things I'm looking at when kind of analyzing this watch, because I think it falls in a range under $10,000 where it's positioned in an arena where it's arguably maybe the best finished bracelet and case for a watch of this style, but the 10-second rotation of that second hand is unconventional to say the least. Now, one of the things that was brought up with the Chronomaster Sports or the Chronomaster Original was the 1/10 of a second indication when you activate the chronograph. The key thing there is when you activate the chronograph. So you still have your running 60 seconds there. With this shifting into a 3-hand model with this sub-seconds, measuring 10 seconds, you do have to ask that question, is the uniqueness coming with the fault of maybe being lacking convenience? That is one of the things I think you have to ask. So I'm still not completely sold on that as an idea. It's cool to see the rotation, it's unconventional, but does the unconventional get in the way? The other thing that I think potentially could be a downside for some people is that this is going to be a larger watch compared to the previous Classic, as well as kind of losing a little bit of depth. It uses texture rather than those cantilevered indices, and I know looks are subjective, but I did prefer the older version of the Classic, even though it was maybe essentially a tad more plain in some other areas of the dial. But now let's talk about the good with this watch. I think when you're looking at what are the #1 attributes when looking at this design, is it, I think, is unique when it comes to the movement. The case is all very much expected, but at least it's doing it exceptionally well. It's incredibly well finished. You're getting also with the bracelet, great articulation, screwed in links. Also now getting that interchangeability with the bracelet and strap options. This is a huge upgrade and probably one of the best executions of this that I've seen in the market in this price range especially. I've always talked about like the overseas and how easy that is to change out the bracelet with different straps. That's a huge upside, and to see it actually being implemented in a watch like this is great, because the previous version with the Defy Classic, that was a challenge. But I think the big thing here is going to have to be just its position in the marketplace. Now, let's just take a moment to think about, maybe a watch of this style. Where could you look? There are a lot of watches that settle around that $2,000 price range, of course, and then you have things like the Laureato. You have, of course, the high horology brands that are going to extend above that. But from this $5,000 to $10,000 range, there's not as many integrated style options if you want to get more of a taste of kind of that luxury fit and finish. This is just falling in that nice kind of sweet spot, I think, for some. If you look past some of the question marks and you don't really mind the 10-second indicator on the dial, if that's not a concern for you and you just want to lean on just the finishing and comfortability of the bracelet and case, then there is something here for you. But as you guys know, I'm a huge fan of Zenith and I like what they're doing. I think arguably this is maybe the best finished integrated style bracelet watch under $10,000. But of course, it comes with its own quirks. But all right, guys, I'd like to see your comments down below. What do you think of this new Defy Skyline from Zenith? Do you like it? Do you not like it? I'd love to see where you fall on the conversation around this piece. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Really would appreciate that. Also, check out the newsletter on teddybaldassarre.com and our great list of guides and new things that are coming out all the time, so definitely check that out. And of course, a full authorized dealer of 30 brands, quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support, and a full factory warranty for all the products that we offer, in a growing pre-owned section as well. So if you're looking to buy and sell, definitely check it out. All right, guys, well, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I'll see you all very soon.